Women Making Waves.
Linda, I'm just packing for my holiday.
You're always packing for holidays, so really, aren't you, to be fair? You should just keep your suitcases packed. What you should do when you come back from one is just wash all the stuff and then put it straight back in.
Well, I should, except it's not very satisfying to do that because I like to put them back in my wardrobe and then choose what I'd like for the next holiday.
The same things again?
No, absolutely not. No.
Well, you've got too big a wardrobe then. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's probably true, actually.
Do you not find with holidays that the planning can be more satisfactory than the going?
Or the planning to plan what you're going to do on the holiday than actual packing for the holiday. I can't bear the packing for the holiday.
I don't like packing.
Because I'm frightened.
No.
Yeah, frightened of missing out, that FOMO of missing out on having not packed the right T-shirt.
Yeah.
I think it's easier for blokes, don't you think?
I think it is, because they don't really care what they wear, do they? Really?
No, it's true, they don't
in
actually.
The main,
and that's,
you know,
yeah,
main.
that's not being not being disrespectful for men at all.
It probably is.
They...
It probably is, a little bit, actually, when I think about it. Sorry to those that are very fussy about what they wear, and I'm talking rubbish, as usual.
Total respect for the men that actually do want to have some say in what they wear.
But does your husband do his own packing, or does he leave it to you?
Yeah, he does.
Mine does my own, his own packing, rather. Not mine.
He does
not
yours
mine.
as
No.
well.
I would never want that to happen. That would be awful.
Can you imagine if we leave the packing, all of the packing, to our husbands or our partners? What do you think would happen?
We'd end up with an empty suitcase. It would be full of their stuff. And there was something in a comedy about that, and somebody left their husband to do the packing for them, and he just forgot. So he had all his stuff and none of hers.
Yeah, no, I think that would keep me up at night, knowing that I had given that job to my husband to do, to pack my own bag. It would never happen.
No, it's never going to
happen.
happen. But I make lots of lists, which I then don't look at when I'm actually packing. But the act of writing it down kind of helps, you know. But I do it in layers.
Yes.
I've got the nighttime layer, the PJ kind of layer, the toiletries and jewellery kind of layer.
Yes.
And then I go on to the casual stuff, and I leave the fancy stuff to the top so it doesn't get quite so creased.
Now, that's a very, very good idea, except over the years, the fancy stuff has diminished greatly.
Oh, yeah.
I've gone for low heels, flat shoes, one T-shirt.
A dress. One dress.
Yes,
just in case.
And that's it. Yeah. I am all for leisure wear now. And I think that's... I don't know.
That's fine, because you don't have that segregation, do you, between night and day? You can just mix and match.
No. You don't anymore, do you?
But
you really
you're
don't.
probably all fancy during the day. You're probably fancied up all day, every day. Therefore, there is no difference between nighttime and daytime for you.
Do you know, I'm going to own that one. I think I'm going to have that. Yeah, probably.
Fancied up.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a phrase.
Yeah.
It's a new thing.
Fancied up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think packing is pretty stressful. So you sort of... I put it to one side. I put everything. I don't know if you do this, Linda. You put everything to one side that you want to take.
On the spare room, on the bed, pile them up in piles. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yes,
yeah,
that's it.
And then discard
then
half
when
of
you
it.
get
There's
there,
no room for the huge piles that you've piled up.
Oh, that's true. And so the thought of jettisoning everything out of what you thought you were going to have, it frightens me.
I do it as a go.
So much.
I do it as a go, because I look at things and I go, just being unreal. And I put them in a separate pile. You see, the unrealistic and staying out of the thing pile. But then at the end, if you've got space, you can start reviewing the unrealistic pile, and potentially, you know, they find a place. Find their place on holiday. They're going. Anyway, enough of all this talking about holidays stuff, Suzie.
Yes.
We've got a couple of brilliant guests today, haven't we? And actually, out of 5 women entrepreneurs from the east of England who've won the prestigious Innovate UK Women in Innovation Award, we have 2 of them on the programme today. So very, very successful and brilliant women. The first one is Monica Saavedra, who's going to talk about greenhouses and the glass that they're using in greenhouses to make plants boost their yield.
And Claire Given, who has turned her frustration into something quite incredible. She has created a company called Equip Me, and it matches people with perfect medical solutions.
You're listening to Women Making Waves radio show and podcast, brought to you by Suzie Thorpe and Linda Ness. This show is all about women doing extraordinary things.
Today we meet CTO and co-founder Monica Saavedra. She's turning sunlight into food. As a physicist turned founder, she created Lambda Agri to solve a fascinating problem. If you can squeeze just 1% more light into a greenhouse, you get 1% more food out. After 2 decades in material science, she's now building tech that could help feed the world, one ray of light at a time. Welcome to Women Making Waves, Monica.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
How excited are you, Monica, with what you are creating at the moment?
Honestly, it's a fantastic feeling to be able to use your training as a physicist, which I didn't think would go as far as get as far as agri-tech or just anywhere as near as far as it's gone for me throughout my career, to be perfectly honest. All the way to food security and saving the world from hunger and doing so sustainably. That is a fantastic feeling and nothing that I could have ever predicted.
Tell us a little bit about Lambda Agri, Monica. Just, it's an absolutely fascinating company and what you're achieving is going to be phenomenal. But just give us a little bit of detail into what exactly is that you're trying to do.
You've introduced us really well, actually, one ray at a time. So one thing that greenhouse growers know very well is that if you increase the amount of sunlight going into a greenhouse by 1%, you can increase the crop yields by 1%. So you can increase the food production by 1% just by having that extra little bit of light. And that's what we're doing. At Lambda Agri, we're trying to maximize the amount of light that's going into a greenhouse and also optimizing it. So having the quality of light that plants need to increase food production with increased photosynthesis. So we're effectively increasing the amount of red light that plants absorb fantastically well and turn it into sugars, making tastier crops, but also more of it, more crop. So that's our aim. Increase the taste of food is a very nice side effect, if you like, whilst our aim is increasing the amount of food that is produced. We're doing that by introducing an additive. It's a chemical, it's a non-toxic chemical, into either coatings for greenhouse panels. So if you imagine a rigid greenhouse, it's got glass panels or polycarbonate panels, most likely glass panels in Europe. And we coat the outside of that, it can be spray coated, with a kind of paint base that is transparent with our active material inside that does the conversion of UV or ultraviolet light to red light. And so we're augmenting that amount of that red light that plants need for photosynthesis, because UV light doesn't even get through the glass of greenhouses. So it'd be wasted light, it's wasted energy. It's such a shame. And we know that sunlight is a powerhouse, and it truly is a nuclear power station of the universe. At the very least in our solar system. And we harness that UV light and convert it into useful light for photosynthesis. So that's what we do at Lambda Agri.
That's absolutely fascinating. And you know what? I love the idea that 1% more of something means 1% more of something else. If it was only the same in life for lots of things, if 1% more effort made a big difference, 1% more of outcome, it'd be fabulous. But I love that idea. Take us back to when you were at university. What were your studies there? I think you alluded to it earlier on, but how did you get to where you got to? Why did you want to study that at university?
I'll be honest, that when I was an 11-year-old, going a little bit further back in time, I read a little line about actually the sun and how helium is formed. And that fascinated me, and since then I always wanted to be a physicist. So just before university, I was absolutely dead certain I would do physics. There was a small part of me that thought, maybe combining it with art. I was fascinated by the arts as well, but it was very difficult to find a course that catered for both physics and art. It was just an unlikely beast. So I ended up going for physics, where my passion was. And at that point, I was lost. There was so much to physics. There were so many fields I could get my hands dirty with. And getting my hands dirty was my number one priority. I knew that I was a bit ADHD and I needed to do something practical with my hands and see it work to really feel like I was hyper-focused and working towards something meaningful. And so, it was only during my summer placement, it was a 3-month placement, that I've realized, goodness, I really enjoy working with nanotechnology. And it was basically introducing additives inside host materials, much like what we're doing at Lambda, actually, but different kinds of active materials at the time. But that's what really intrigued me and really brought me into the world of advanced materials for whatever purpose, really. And, the purpose had to be meaningful, but at the time, it was still a fuzzy image in my head as to what I could do. At the time, I was working with radiation detectors and making those. But later, after I finished my degree in physics, I ended up in a company that made anodes for batteries. They were silicon-based anodes. The nano bit was the nano pillars, or very, very small-sized pillars on the outside of what was basically like a ball of silicon. And there were lots of these little tiny things that, because of their small size, did something that the bulk material, so the large material, even if made from the same stuff, didn't do. And that to me was, again, fascinating. And I just kept on that same road of nanotech, smart materials for the greater purpose. So started off, as I mentioned, in batteries, but in particular for electric vehicles, and then ended up in solar, and soon after agri, because some of these same materials can do wonderful things for a variety of applications. So that keeps it interesting.
You mentioned the word there, Monica, greater purpose. Now, I assume you've created something really quite interesting, because we know you've won awards, you've won Emerging Technologies competition in the energy industry in 2023. There's quite a list of awards and funds that you have been winning. But the greater purpose, I'd like to know, it's fantastic that you say that you are creating something like this, but there must be an ulterior motive for you. Is that right for you?
Yeah, honestly, since I can remember, I always cared for food poverty. There's something inside me. It might have been the adverts that we saw on the television of starving children. It was quite commonplace in the 90s, early 90s. And it really used to take me by the heart and rip it, and it made me realize just how lucky I was, and I wanted to do something for those who weren't as lucky. And I didn't start in such a privileged position myself, but at the same time, I wanted to do something for the world. I could see it was not in a good place. I remember during school times, I used to have a cheap cheese sandwich every day for 5 years. When it came to nutrition and sort of quality of food, I definitely wasn't in the top percentiles, but I wanted to make a difference. And when I got the opportunity, when I saw that actually what we were making in lab was something that could turn things around for plants, I realized, hey, we could feed the world. I can actually go back on the horse, and all of those wonderful stories that I've imagined as a child, that I would help poor children in need and offer them food, and all sorts of stories I used to make up. I can now make it a reality in a slightly indirect way. As an additives company, we can supply this chemical to manufacturers of materials for greenhouses, who can then sell the product to growers, who can in turn then make cheaper food that is also tastier for the masses. So we're increasing food equality or nutrition equality. More people will be able to afford it because you'll be able to make more food per unit area of land. So that is a big win for us.
You mentioned getting your hands dirty was a number one priority. You're now the CEO of the company. Are you still able to get your hands dirty, Monica, or is that something now that you're finding more and more difficult because you're tied up with board meetings or with meetings with managers, or you know how it goes? Are you still managing to maintain that?
Oh, funny you should ask that. We have a board meeting coming up, and I've spent all day preparing a pitch and also investment meetings and looking into applications to apply for funds. So yes, no, you're right. There's very little that I am able to do in the lab at this point in time. The company has grown over the past 3.5 years that we've been involved in the Agri project. But longer, because we started as a solar company actually, so it's a little bit of a backstory which I can go into if you would like later on. But the company has become a more chemistry heavy company as well, which means that we really needed chemists in lab. So they're on the ground, they're in the chemistry labs at the University of Cambridge. We're at the chemistry department there, and they're having a great time. And I wouldn't want to spoil their fun by just being there and saying, hey, I can try my hand at this and then mess it up because I'm a physicist.
Yes. Physicists and chemists, that's not a good mix, is it?
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of rivalry going on there. So I call their work splishy splashy, whilst they call they say that what we do is not as exciting as chemistry. So it's there's always some bickering here and there, but just for the fun of it, to lighten up meetings. But I do get to prototype little bits and pieces for the lab sometimes. So we've got a 3D printer in-house, so I get to do some of the CAD designing and 3D printing and providing them with what they need to get the experiments going. So that's great.
I wanted to ask you, Monica, how linear your journey has been. I mean, have you had challenges? And we can all agree having children, I know you have young children as well, is a challenge, and it's hard work as a woman to do all this, but it's certainly possible, and we should be recognising women like you who are literally finding the time to do all this. But how linear has your journey been? How have the challenges been for you?
Thank you it's definitely been very zigzaggy, so not very linear at all. It was in part trying to find my way through. I didn't know what I would end up doing. I jumped from one thing to the other, and there is a common theme with everything I've done, as I mentioned before, advanced materials / physics for the greater good. But if my drive is just far too strong for anything to get in the way, I don't want to say that children get in the way. I never want to say that to my children ever. I was definitely one of the lucky ones in that my mother moved to Cambridge from London to help me out before my first son was born. So now I'm on my second. He's 4 months old. He's coming to all of my investor meetings.
Brilliant.
He's not seen a single baby group. But that's something that I probably need to change. But I'm told it's mostly for the parents and not so much for the children. So I feel less bad about that.
It is.
That's right.
But I'm trying not to let guilt set in. That's definitely something that from time to time challenges me. It seeps in when I least expect it, and it's almost like a voice in my head saying, you should be spending more time with your children. What are you doing? But then I look at the situation as what it is, and usually I am, say, for example, putting baby's asleep, and then I go straight on my laptop. The other one is being told stories by his father, so he can fall asleep. And so during that time, I just spend, say, an hour and a half working, and I tell myself, it's fine, they're asleep or they're going to sleep and they're being taken care of. I can do this. So there is definitely work in the evenings like this and the weekends as well, and in slightly different forms. But there is often a voice in my head that has to counteract the guilt and say, you can do this and it's fine. The energy is there, the drive is there. Some people wonder where on earth I get the energy to do what I do, but it's just there. I don't know, it's genetic maybe, I don't know. I think it's just having passion for something. And then you just find a way, you kind of wiggle it through somehow, and things just kind of happen.
Well, I'm very impressed, and I think it's wonderful that you can do this. And
also, you're saying exactly the same as many other women that we've spoken to. Exactly the same. When you've got full-on jobs, it's incredibly difficult to, and everyone talks about guilt as well, I think you're very lucky to have your mum around. That's because that is a massive relief. It's somebody you can trust. You're not kind of leaving them with nannies. I'm sure you can trust nannies as well, but it's a different kind of relationship, really. So it's great.
I agree.
So what made you start up a company? Because that's a big step, isn't it?
It's a big step, but at the same time, I felt a little bit like I didn't quite fit into anything that I was trying. I could make myself fit, but there was something that was telling me I need to do my own thing. Again, it was like a little voice in my head that became louder and louder and louder. And I noticed that, again, there was a pattern. I was joining companies that were getting smaller and smaller. So my first company, there were about 50 people. That's the batteries company. Then I joined a company with about 30 employees. That was based for innovation in Cambridge. That's what brought me to Cambridge, in fact. And then, after that, I joined a company of about 5 people. And I thought, wow, okay, getting smaller and smaller. I wonder if I am next. And of course, as you go smaller and smaller, you also see the inner workings of a startup in a very, in a more and more sort of true and transparent and raw state. And so you really get to grips with what it is that needs to be done to make a company successful.
You're talking about companies being successful. I read somewhere that you've said getting enough words into a meeting driven by testosterone-rich men has been a challenge. And it says finding where you belong. I think this is really interesting. You say finding where you belong is crucial. Turn the monsters that feast on your mind into superheroes by converting your inner chatter into constructive voices that build up you as your company. That's an incredible piece of reflection there. I really love that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I've been talking a little bit about the voices in my head, and it turns out that most people have inner chatter, and these voices can be helpful and sometimes they can sabotage you. And what one always tries to do is to ensure that anything negative that comes to mind, you can counteract to either neutralize it or turn it into something positive. So you can then constructively do something for your company, for yourself. And that general way of thinking has helped me an awful lot with introspection, but building the company up as a consequence as well. So, as a founder, you get a lot of no's. You will pitch a company to somebody and they'll have a very strong idea as to what goes and what doesn't. And you don't know exactly what they're thinking, why they're saying no to you. But you might take it quite personally in the first few times. If you sort of let the inner voices take over, you might say, right, I'm done. That's it. Nobody cares for what I'm doing. End it right here. But actually, what you find is that maybe you haven't phrased something convincingly enough. Maybe you haven't said it in a way that they understand it. Maybe, there's lots of reasons as to why they might say no, because often people make their mind up within the first few seconds that they talk to you. And so, as long as, say, you have a counteracting voice that says, for example, this is what happens, and this is what you could say. You could say differently next time. Someone to almost guide you along, like a little guardian on your shoulder to tell you, carry on. You can do better. You thought this piece was good, but actually you can improve on that further. That growth mindset that takes you further and takes the company further as well. I think that's really, really key. One of my inner monsters, other than the chatter, was the ADHD type symptoms that I've had throughout my life. I don't know if it's ADHD. It's kind of self-diagnosed. I shouldn't self-diagnose, but there's so many commonalities that the symptoms all match. So I went on a little bit of a journey to ensure that I kept my ADHD in check and tried to see it instead of something that sabotages me as something that actually empowers me. To give an example, the CEO job that was thrusted upon me, I wasn't sure if I would be up for the job when it was given to me. I thought I'd give it a bash, because I always do. I'd give things a try, and then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter, I try harder. And I found out quite quickly that actually, yes, that suits me really, really nicely, because I get to change lots of hats. So, I don't stay still for a second. I start on something and then, oh, right, this is high priority, better jump on that. And my brain can very easily, in very agile ways, switch from one thing to the other. So I'm, in effect, actually quite lucky that I've managed my brain with this kind of, property for so long.
Property and coping mechanisms. I think it's, I just think it's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Well,
Monica.
A lot of people with ADHD have lack of focus, but you're actually turning that on its head, aren't you, and using that to your advantage. You're not going to get bored if you're constantly having to change and, pick up something else and then jump to something else. And then it's kind of, it's almost like a dream for someone with those qualities, really, that you can do that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I honestly think that anybody listening to this who has something similar, please consider seeing yourself as having an inner superhero that's trying to tell you could do this, and to sort of focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do, and then you'll just find your niche and what fits with you and find that place where you belong.
Yeah, exactly. We once did a program where we featured someone with ADHD speaking to someone else who helped people with ADHD, and it was a really, really interesting conversation, actually. But tell us a little about, you were talking about solar, and you said you've been involved in that before. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the company started as a solar company. We had a bit of a screeching pivot about 3.5 years ago. That's when I said things went a little bit zigzaggy, not so linear. But it is quite common in startups. So I tried to see it as such. And again, I tried not to let the monster feed on me by saying, hey, you kind of failed as solar. It's like, no, what actually happened, and this is what the Guardian voice said instead, is that our technology wasn't ready for solar, but it was ready for agri, and that's why we pivoted, and we stayed there ever since. And it is a fantastic field to be in right now. It is getting hotter and hotter as well. The investors are demanding more deals in this field. And generally, the government has been super supportive and granted us a lot of grants. Because food security is a big issue. 2 billion people are food insecure at present, and we need a fix. And climate change is making things even harder, and we need controlled environments in which to grow our food, and well, we need food to survive. So it becomes now a very, very basic survival thing that we need to look after. And we appear to be suddenly thrusted at the forefront of this, which is great.
And better the chemicals are used in the glass than used in the soil. That's my opinion anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So it's something that we actually found out recently is non-toxic. So we sent it over to laboratories that check for toxicology and other properties of the material, and it's not toxic. So even if it were to end up in the soil, we are not worried at all. We weren't worried before it went to the labs because we had a good idea. We were designing something from the onset that wasn't toxic.
I would definitely call you a superhero. I know that you talk about inner superhero, but I think we both agree you are an incredible woman, Monica, and
fabulous.
Thank you so much indeed for talking to us here at Women Making Waves. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know our listeners will be absolutely enthralled by it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're listening to Women Making Waves radio show and podcast, brought to you by Suzie Thorpe and Ness. This show is all about women doing extraordinary things.
We meet founder Claire Given, who is revolutionising online shopping through her company EquipMe, making it accessible for the 25% of people who don't fit the standard mould. Born with one hand, Claire spent years purchasing products she couldn't use, from hairdryers to baby strollers. Now, fed up with the endless frustration, she built what she couldn't find, a platform where healthcare professionals help match people with products that actually work for their bodies. Hello, Claire. Welcome to Women Making Waves.
Hello, Suzie. Hello, Linda. Lovely to speak to you.
Oh, it's great.
Today.
Great to have you.
Lovely to have you, yes. Now, as Suzie mentioned in the introduction, you were born with one hand. And you actually said that this has helped you become a problem solver. But did this have any impact on you as a child and when you were growing up?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously there were challenges with it, but I really like to see the positives that I got from my arm. So I was born with it, so it's something that I've never known any difference, and I think it's made me more determined. So if anybody ever said that I wasn't probably best suited for something, or I found something challenging, it just made me even more motivated for me to find a way. I remember when I was at school in secondary school, and I used to love rounders, and we had a new PE teacher come in, and she was really lovely, but for some reason she thought that I'd find rounders challenging, so she asked if I'd like to go and sit this one out, and I was mortified because this was my favourite sport. So I said, no, I'm fine, thank you very much, but no, I'm fine. And then I proceeded to get as many rounders as I possibly could that day.
So, perfect.
Yeah, it really just kind of made me more determined. That's kind of how I look at it. And I think it also helped me in that when I was growing up, I was really lucky to be surrounded by just lovely, fantastic friends who really saw me for who I am. And it just made me a really good judge of character, I think. And so I have a good radar for empty words, which is particularly useful in business. So I think there's been lots of benefits that have come from having one hand.
When you say empty words, just explain a little bit by what you mean by empty words, Claire.
Yeah, I think when you're working in business, you can come across some people where they'll be saying everything you kind of want to hear, but you know that there's not really anything behind it. And yeah, you do come across that quite a lot. But yeah, I think I have quite a good radar of spotting people who are doing that and who are genuinely keen to kind of progress and move forward and will do what they say they're going to do.
When you left university, you left with a bachelor's in journalism. I'm kind of imagining that you didn't see your career as following the path that it actually has. Is that right?
No, that's totally right. Yeah, I've had a really squiggly career, I would say. So I went and did a journalism degree simply because I loved writing, and when you're that age you don't really know what you want to do you? I didn't really have a clue. But I thought, right, I'm going to try and get into Bournemouth, which was the best course in the country for journalism at that time. and like travelled, I think it was 4.5 hours to get there from home. So it was a really big move for me. I remember being in floods of tears when Dad was dropping me off, like many students. And yeah, I loved that course. And afterwards I went and did some work in newspapers. I worked at She magazine on a placement, and it was great. But I had this itch for more. I liked organising. I liked kind of doing things as well as writing. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to give PR a go. And I actually did a year in PR, which I enjoyed, but it was lacking a bit of meaning for me. And so I decided I wanted to go travelling, and I went travelling for a year on my own around the world. And I used my skills as a journalist to help lots of charities along the way kind of refine their messaging and communication strategy. And I kind of did that just because I wanted to. And when I got back to London, I remember going to see a recruiter and handing them my CV and saying, I really don't know, what I'm good for, but this is my experience. And she said, oh, I think I've got the perfect job for you. And it was actually a role at Bupa, the healthcare organisation, working within their corporate social responsibility department. And I loved that role so much, and quickly progressed up into quite a senior position of like managing the CSR efforts globally for them. And that was great because I was able to kind of see programs through from their initial idea through to actually delivering it and measuring the impact. And this was across lots of different types of programs and engaging communities and things like that. So that was a really great role for me in kind of learning a lot of the skills that you need when you are kind of running a business. And then youth unemployment was really, really rife in the UK about 4 or 5 years after I started at Bupa. And I wanted to do something about that. And so I created, this is when I kind of first moved into entrepreneurship. And I created Inspire, Motivate and Engage, which was offered a career mentoring program for young and employed people across the UK. And it was really just aimed to kind of give them the skills and the confidence they needed to walk into their jobs. And at that point, career mentoring was really aimed at they'd match young people with really senior people within the businesses. But I was thinking, well, if you have somebody that wants to become an office manager or something else within the business, why aren't we matching people's actual career aspirations to the mentor? It doesn't need to be a senior director. They're not going to be able to provide them with the information that they need. So that's what we did, and it actually became the career mentoring program in the UK with the highest recruitment and retention rates. And we had some fantastic statistics in that the young people were actually getting employed off the back of the program as well, which was kind of a step further than I was expecting. So that was fantastic. And I ran IME for 10 years, and it was tough going at times. We had some really fantastic moments, and then we had some really tough moments as well. And it was after 10 years that I decided that I wanted to change, and that's kind of when I moved to the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which was a complete change from what I was doing.
So I just wanted to ask you, Claire, there's somewhere that you said that you felt sometimes that you were the only body in the room like yours. From going to the Raspberry Pi, did it give you an inspiration to recognise that you were not alone in your disability, but you wanted to improve it? And was Raspberry Pi sort of the change for you?
I think it was actually earlier than that. When I remember being at Bupa, and I'd go and present to the board, and I used to take a big deep breath before walking in, as many people would. But I knew that I would be the only person in there with a disability, and it does. People are interested and want to take a look and everything else, and it can make some people feel a little bit awkward, I think, is the thing. And so you have to make yourself bigger and be even more confident in what you're saying to take the attention away from my arm with my words and what I'm trying to convey. So I definitely felt it earlier in my career, but again, it kind of helped me develop those skills to overcome it.
Very much so.
Which was great. And then and it was such a fantastic team at Bupa. It's an amazing organisation, and the same with the Raspberry Pi. I mean, there's such an inclusive, wonderful foundation, and I never felt. Well, you always feel a bit different, but everybody feels a bit different in some way or other.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think times have definitely improved in the last few years in terms of seeing people for who they are.
So I'm interested in the work that you did with Raspberry Pi, actually. I remember when it was launched because it was featured on the news at the time, actually, and it was highly publicised. You led a design team that developed the new hardware for the International Space Station, which sounds like a phenomenally exciting project. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work you did there?
Yeah, so it was completely new to me when I started in the role. Obviously, I had program management experience, so I was familiar in that. But, the space industry is a completely different kettle of fish to what I was used to before. So it was a very steep learning curve for me. And yes, so there was two things I was working on. One was managing the AstroPi program, and for those who don't know the AstroPi program, it's an amazing opportunity for young people who are looking how to learn to code, and what they get to do is send their completed code to the International Space Station to interact with the AstroPi on board, and then collect data which they can then run scientific experiments with when the data comes back. So such an amazing opportunity. So I was running the European-wide program, but then also we needed to upgrade the hardware because radiation in space was attacking the version 1, and there was only a certain life cycle that it had. So we needed to create a new design. So it involved working with product engineers. I used to have to go to the European Space Agency safety boards, and we'd go through every type of material that's used in the new hardware, and we'd have to explain our reasoning, and it was intense, but we managed to get it approved. And then when it was actually sent up to the International Space Station, it was and it survived the launch, so which was good. It was an amazing day for me and the team who were working on it.
Claire, what's the time frame for this? It sounds like a very challenging time for you. How did that all pan out? As in, what was the time frame for this?
It was probably around 6 years ago now, off the top of my head. It was challenging because it was COVID. I had two young children at home as well, and it was a very demanding role. And it was also, starting something that you don't have too much experience in is always challenging, but that's when you learn the most. I always remember Philip Colligan saying, if it was easy, you wouldn't be learning anything, and it's completely true. You learn through the really tough projects, and it was tough, but it was also fantastic. The team really came together, and we delivered, and we got through all of the challenges along the way. So yeah, it was something I look back on with real pride.
And that's still running to this day, isn't it? Kids are still encouraged to.
Oh yes, yeah. It's still going strong. Yeah, I hope it continues for many, many more years.
As a woman, Claire, did you find you were one of few, or did you find that you were able to meet like-minded people?
I think there were points where, particularly when you're working in engineering, it's you can often be the only woman there. The Raspberry Pi Foundation, there were points where I was the only woman in the room, but then there were also some fantastic women in other teams, so it all kind of balanced out in the end. And I had a fantastic the kind of head of the department was a woman as well before she left, so I did have another woman in the team for a while. And I don't really see it. I didn't really see it as a huge problem for me. I just kind of got on with it. And
that's the best way. I read somewhere that you were interested in space way before you did that project. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember when I think I must have been about 7. I did a school project on UFOs. And I made I don't know if you remember from years and years ago, there was a show called Strange But True, and it was my favourite show. And I used to record it on VHS tapes. That's how old I am. And I played it for the class, and I dressed my friend up as a little alien. I got her to hide in a cupboard at the back of the classroom, and got her to come out at the end, and everybody screamed, and it was really good. So yeah, I've always been interested in I love all the science publications, and I just find it all so fascinating, and it's something that I'm passing on to my children.
And so it must have been extra exciting actually to be involved with the International Space Station, I imagine, as well.
Oh God, yeah! I had so many country moments that you're just
brilliant.
Like, how am I here doing this? I can't quite understand it, but I think it's really great for young people to know that, you don't need to know exactly what you're going to do from the get-go. You can pivot, you can change. I just think as long as you're following your passion and your interests, it will come together. Often.
I want to touch on the Innovate UK Women in Innovation Awards, because you were one of 5 women this year from the east of England who won the award. How did that all pan out? And congratulations.
Oh,
fantastic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was such an honour, and I couldn't believe it when I heard the news that I'd won. It's a robust process to be entered into the awards, and there was over 1,400 applications this year, and only 50 were selected. So I didn't. To be honest, when the team was putting it in, I thought, I don't really think we're gonna get very far with this. But it turns out that we did, and I think it's just wonderful that Innovate UK have put together this program to help female founders, not only with the funding that you need to kind of grow and scale your business, but also with the support that they're providing as well. So I really recommend any female innovator out there to check out their website, because they've been fantastic.
We talked earlier about the fact you started up Inspire, Motivate and Engage, and now you've also started up Equip Me. Tell us a little bit about that organisation.
Yeah, sure. So Equip Me started during COVID. So I was isolating with my 2 kids and running the 2 programs that we've talked about, and I was going slightly mad and just kind of barely keeping everything together. So I turned to exercise, which I think lots of people did at that time. And so I was doing Joe Wicks in the morning with the kids. But I started to worry that I was doing more harm to my body than good, because so many of the exercises require balance over both hands. And I obviously was only born with one. So I started searching online for products to kind of fix my problem. And after weeks of searching, came up with nothing. And I felt really overlooked. And it was really quite an isolating experience. But I told myself to, stop feeling sorry for myself, and let's kind of fix my problem. So, and I've been really lucky to work alongside the engineers that I had been at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and I designed my first 2 products, and these allowed me to exercise, and one of them even allowed me to do a handstand, which is something that I never thought I'd be able to experience. And the GB Paralympics team heard about this, and I travelled up to Loughborough and went to their training camp, and to see them using my kit that I created just for me solving my problem at home, it was incredible. And I thought, wow, well, it's obviously not just me. There's a bigger problem here. And so I started to research and really kind of dive into the issue. And I found that it's much bigger than what I thought. So half of disabled people feel that mainstream brands feel that they overlook them in their product designs, and 90% feel that product descriptions lack the essential details they need in order to purchase a product. And considering that people with physical impairments make up 25% of the UK, this is the problem I set out to solve. And so what we're doing with Equip Me is we're building a product matching engine which is powered by the lived experiences of thousands of people living with physical impairments. And with it, we're creating a personalised recommendations platform, and this helps people find products that are suited to how their body works, from prams to hair dryers or anything in between. And we're also building the Equip Me Insights tool for retailers to better understand how their product performs across different impairments. Currently designing for all is a complicated and time-consuming process, but our technology will speed this up and provide the data needed to make designs work for every type of body. And this will help save on development time, reduce costly returns, and improve product descriptions. So ultimately increasing sales, but while better serving the 25% of the population that are currently living with physical impairment.
I love your attitude, Claire, because it's true entrepreneurship. You have a problem, you fix the problem, and then you look at how you can help other people fix their problems as well. It's really inspiring, actually. Brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
And it's in many ways, when you talk about it being a problem, well, who's the problem for? People that don't make the products make it a problem for you. So you're literally eliminating a problem now. You're making it, I think you're making it in a way that it's not a problem to have a body that we have. Is that how you feel about it? You want to inspire people that it's not an issue anymore?
Yeah, totally. I think it's just quite amazing that in the kind of times we're living in, where personalisation is so key across the internet. However, when it comes to when your body doesn't fit the status quo, it's completely overlooked, and that I found that crazy. So I think it's just a case of we just need to catch that part up, really, and that's what I'm hoping to do with our technology. And we're, the work we're doing to kind of give data to product designers and retailers, it's really training the trainer. It's not that businesses aren't wanting to do the right thing. I don't think it's just that they don't know where to start. And so I'm hoping that by doing this, we can provide that information much faster and be able to give them connections with disabled people so that they can learn from lived experiences, so that we move towards a world in which every type of body is better considered from the get-go.
Perfect. We talked about the Innovate UK Women in Innovation Awards, but you have very recently been selected as a STEM role model by the Lightyear Foundation as well, I believe. Tell us about that.
I was contacted by the charity recently, and they do some really fantastic work with young people living with disabilities. And what they wanted to do was be able to show young people, people who are working within STEM careers, who are living with disabilities, because it's very true. I remember when I was growing up, there were lots of roles and jobs that when I was about 9 or 10, I just used to consider, is that really going to be available for me? Are people going to give me these jobs because of my arm? And I was super lucky that I managed to have a great career and meet some fantastic mentors along the way. But there is a real need for people to be able to see others like them in careers that they want to do. And I think it's also really important for them to realise, like I said earlier, that you can have a squiggly career. It's okay. You don't need to have a PhD in mathematics to have a job in STEM. You can find your way there through your own passion and determination. So it's I'm absolutely delighted to support the charity, and I'm looking forward to supporting them in more ways than just this role modelling opportunity, but hopefully going to support them with some of their workshops and things in the future as well.
I really love the way you say squiggly career, because it's so apt for these days now. People used to be in jobs for 40, 50, 30, 20 years, whatever. And I think it's so invigorating to know that you can do, if you change careers or if you do something different, it's okay to do it. And I love that squiggly career term. It's brilliant,
Yeah.
Claire.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's. I think you have to be a bit of a risk taker, and I guess to be an entrepreneur, you need to kind of have that quality. So maybe that's part of it as well. But yeah, I don't think you should be afraid of change and trying something new. Just always go by what drives you.
What out of interest in the journey that you've taken so far, is there something that really sticks out? What's been totally unexpected for you?
I think it's just how in life you can have an idea. And so, for example, with Quick Me, it started with us just looking at the product matching engine and building a platform for people to shop on. However, I love how things can change and develop, and now obviously we've spotted these new opportunities to use the product matching engine in a way in which can help, kind of as we mentioned earlier, train the trainer. So give the information to the product designers so that we can really make a much bigger impact. And I think that's something that is really interesting to me, and something I always learn from whenever I'm working on a project. There's also always that kind of moment where it changes into something completely different, or not different, but it takes this slightly different pivot or track and makes it better. So I think it's just an example of don't be afraid of change.
I think that is a fantastic way to end, actually, this lovely feature. Well done, you, Claire. Honestly, we're both in admiration for what you do and continue to do, and how you inspire so many people.
Yeah, really.
And it's great. I love interviews like this. Thank you so much indeed for coming on to Women Making Waves.
That's all we have time for today on Women Making Waves. Our thanks go to our guests, Monica Saavedra and Claire Given. We're always on the lookout to feature women living extraordinary lives. So please do contact us if you know of someone we should be talking to.
You can contact us via social media on X and Facebook at WomenMW, or on Instagram at Women Making Waves. And you can also find us on cambridge.radio or visit our website womenmakingwaves.co.uk, where you can hear all of our interviews.